Alright, I received a request to talk about hypothyroid and hyperthyroid. Last video we talked all about the production of thyroid hormone. But in this video we're going to talk about the effects of the thyroid hormones. You see, thyroid hormone has a myriad of different effects on different cells inside of the body. So we're going to discuss those effects and talk about what happens if we have too much or too little thyroid hormone. So when thyroid can get into the cell, it binds to what are called thyroid response elements. And these are literally proteins on our DNA that thyroid can bind to and activate, allowing them to transcribe certain parts of our genetics that code for upregulation of different proteins inside of our cells. And the proteins vary depending on which cell they bind to. For example, let's start with the metabolism. One of the most well understood roles of the thyroid hormone is an increase in our metabolism. And the way it does this is quite interesting. So the thyroid response elements inside of cells like our muscle and our fat tissue actually encode for a protein called a sodium-potassium ATPase. And all this protein does is it uses ATP in order to push 3 sodium into the blood and bring 2 potassium out of the blood into the cell. But the important thing here is that this utilizes ATP, so it depletes the amount of ATP inside of our cells. Therefore, the cell is forced to make more ATP, meaning it has to use fatty acids, glucose, and amino acids in order to produce more ATP. Additionally, in response to this low ATP, the cell will begin to produce more mitochondria, the little organelles inside of our cell that actually produce the ATP in the first place. Additionally, the cells will begin consuming more oxygen, because in this scenario, oxygen is required to produce ATP. Therefore, the cell will require more oxygen. So in this way, we simply burn more calories in order to maintain the same supply of ATP. Additionally, another thing it does is T3 stimulates the production of what are called uncoupling proteins. And these are proteins that sit inside of our mitochondria, and they disrupt the process of producing ATP out of glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. You see, when we break down these products, instead of creating ATP, these proteins actually release some of the energy as heat, meaning we simply need to burn more calories in order to create enough ATP to maintain cellular function. So through both of these mechanisms, the thyroid hormone actually increases the metabolism of our cells. So in a scenario in which we have too high thyroid, we will have very high body temperature, and we will also have a difficult time putting on weight due to a higher metabolism. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, it increases the activity of those sodium-potassium ATPases, which brings potassium out of the bloodstream and pushes sodium into the bloodstream. So in individuals who have a low thyroid, they may have high levels of potassium in the blood and lower levels of sodium. And someone who is thyrotoxic, meaning they have too much thyroid hormone, may end up with low levels of potassium in the blood and high levels of sodium. Additionally, something extremely interesting is that during metabolism, we produce carbon dioxide, and this can be measured inside of our blood. And individuals with low thyroid may actually end up having low carbon dioxide in the blood as a result of a decreased metabolism. So someone with low thyroid may have an easier time putting on weight, may be much colder because they don't have many of these uncoupling proteins producing heat, and they may have some of those blood manifestations I just mentioned. And now that's the major function of the thyroid hormone, but there are many other functions that I think you'll find interesting. Thyroid increases the turnover of things like bones, skin, hair, nails, and even our muscle tissue, meaning it increases the breakdown and buildup of these tissues. Someone with low thyroid may have hair loss, brittle skin, hair, and nails, and their skin may not be as moist. Additionally, they may suffer from low muscle mass, and this is typically due to the fact that the thyroid hormone can regulate the regeneration and production of these tissues. And someone with hyperthyroid may have thicker hair and moister skin, however, they may also suffer with low bone mass, because too high thyroid increases the catabolism or breakdown of bones and muscle, and it may outweigh the benefits of the thyroid on the regeneration of these tissues. Therefore, untreated hypothyroid also could result in low bone mass and low muscle mass. Another super interesting thing that the thyroid does is it regulates the production of LDL and HDL lipoproteins, and also increases the amount of receptors on the liver for these lipoproteins. So it increases the amount of LDL and HDL pushed into the bloodstream, but it also increases the amount of LDL and HDL uptaken by the liver. So in hyperthyroid patients, they may have hypocholesterolemia, or simply a low level of cholesterol in the blood, because this thyroid hormone increases the uptake of LDL at the liver, meaning less of it is floating around in our bloodstream. And someone with low thyroid may actually have elevated levels of both LDL and HDL inside of the bloodstream, which is a marker that could be measured on blood work to give you another indication of where your thyroid level is at. And now one thing that I absolutely can't leave out is constipation and digestion. So the thyroid hormone increases what's called transit time, and this is the speed at which food moves through your intestinal tract. So someone with hypothyroid could suffer with constipation and gastrointestinal disorders, because they have longer transit time, meaning food sits in their stomach for longer and doesn't move as quickly. Whereas someone with hyperthyroid has extremely low transit time, meaning food moves very quickly through their intestinal tract, and can suffer with diarrhea and malabsorption. The last thing I'll touch on is that the thyroid hormone can upregulate the production of what are called beta-adrenergic receptors. And these are receptors that adrenaline will bind to and exert its functions. On the heart, an increase of these receptors makes the heart more sensitive to adrenaline. And when adrenaline binds, it increases the heart rate and stroke volume, meaning the amount of blood we produce with every heartbeat. And someone with high thyroid may have an increased heart rate and could even suffer with higher blood pressure due to increased stroke volume. And someone with low thyroid would have a lower heart rate and may have lower blood pressure. Additionally, this receptor is present on the fat cells, and when adrenaline binds, it releases fatty acids. One way that thyroid can actually shift our metabolism away from carbohydrates and increase the usage of fatty acids as energy. With that being said, there are a myriad of other functions of the thyroid hormone, such as the fact that the thyroid hormone is extremely important in proper development of the brain, eyes, ears, and other cognitive functions. And genetically low thyroid hormone can actually lead to many cognitive defects. With that being said, there are so many other functions of the thyroid hormone that I simply don't have time to get into. But I hope you found this video informative and helpful, and I hope you found it very easy to understand. And if you're ready to take control of your health and energy and learn more about your physiology, send me a DM to sign up for coaching.